Okay, this is a quick video on the various types of adapters that we have for dog shows and what works and doesn't work, what we've learned over the years, and we're going to go through each one of them to explain it. And some of them are in the shade and a little hard to see, but my fabulous assistant's going to pick it up if needed. We can see the end of that one fine. This is a basic surge protector here that just gives you surge only. The next one is a step up that will actually give you amperage readings and has some other features on it. You can look it up online. And then we upgraded to a Hughes Power Watchdog with the emergency power on and off and Bluetooth. What's nice about this surge guard is that this screen gives you amperage readings, so when you're running on 20 or 15 amps, you can see how much you're drawing so you don't trip the breaker. The next one is a regular household plug to a 30 amp for your 30 amp rig. You really have to have that because a lot of dog shows in our area only have 20 amps and household cords. This one is angled, which works out better because this one, when plugged in like that, will pull out of the plug. Or if it's sitting on the ground plugged in, it will slowly pull out of the plug, where the angled one fits nicely into the plug and stays there. So that's a big plus. The next two are what they call twist locks. And if you look at the end, it has a twist on it in a circular fashion. That one's a 15 amp and this one's a 20 amp. On the other end are a 30 amp adapter, and this one only comes with a household adapter on it, so you'd have to use this one. Hold on to that one too. You'd have to use all this in combination to make it work, because they don't have one that goes from 15 amps to 30. So you'd have to use that whole setup for getting power. And they use that on construction spider boxes, they call it. And some fairgrounds will use those so the plugs don't fall out of the box. And no one really carries these type of adapters, so you'll have an option to get power that way. The next one is a reverse plug, where you have a plug into 30 and household on the other side. So in case you need to run just to a normal extension cord or something like that. We've actually never used this. What we used to use it for was we had one of those little plug-in testers that went into the outlet, and we would test the outlet first to see if it was safe. And now that we have the Hughes Power Watchdog, we don't do that. These are what they call taps, where you have one plug in and then you have three going out. These are very convenient to hook up the blow dryer and the hair dryer and the lights or the fans or stuff like that. So those are worth having. One's an extension cord, the other one's just a little jumper. This next item here is what they call a cheater cord, or a Y. It's 50 amps on that yellow end down at the bottom. That's 50 amps if you have a 50 amp rig. And what you have to do with this one is plug it in both ends at the same time. You can't use them one plugged in and one not, okay? Because this would be on one breaker and this would be on another breaker to give you 120 out of phase with each other, so that you can use 20 amps on one side and 20 amps on the other. So if you notice, this has got an angled plug in it, and this is the 30 amp plug. So a lot of dog shows we go to, they just give us a board with a bunch of 20 amp receptacles or 15 amp receptacles on it on 20 amp breakers. So if we find 240 volts between two outlets, we can use this. And then all we do is use this adapter on it, and now we can plug into two household plugs, so we can get two different circuits into the 50 amp rig and run both air conditioners just fine. But we can't use this at the campground we're at because they have the 20 amp plug, it's a GFI, and they have it installed upside down, and this doesn't twist upside down in order to plug it in, so we're not using it here. We're just using the straight 30 amp receptacle. If you have a 30 amp rig and you get 50 amp power, you'll need one of these where it's 50 on one end and 30 on the other end, so you can plug in your 30 amp cord into a 50 amp outlet. That happens very, very rarely, except at big fairgrounds. But a lot of times the clubs have a rule that if you find 50 amps, you have to split it. That way you're sharing the 50 amps between two RVs. So in that case, you get this one where you have the 50 amp plug on the end, and then you have a pair of 30s on the other end. And we've used this numerous times where this is for the rig next to us and this is for our rig, and two 30 amp rigs run just fine on one 50 amp 240 volt circuit. So that's a necessity if it's in the rules for the campground that you're staying at, or the fairgrounds you're staying at for the dog show, where it says you must split 50 amps. You can't hog it all for yourself. So what we have now on the back of our rig, we're at a 30 amp campground, and what we have is 30 amps like that, and you can see the 15 amp plug is installed upside down so that you can't get power off that adapter. And then we convert it from 30 amps to 50 amps, and then we run down into our Hughes Power Watchdog, and you have to lay it the way it is so that it doesn't put stress on the cord, and that connects Bluetooth into our RV, and now we're going 50 amps in. So that's our setup here, but it's important sometimes to use the angle cords so they don't fall out of the outlets, and then keep the lid shut to keep tension on it. So again, that's all the outlets that we use, the adapters that we use for dog shows. And like I said, we've used just about every single one of these, except for this one was only used for testing outlets with a plug adapter that had reverse current and all that other stuff and measured it. And then we started off with the low end power surge, then learned more, then got the high end one with the current on it, and then we got the Hughes Power Watchdog, which I highly recommend. So basically these four, if you have a 30 amp rig, will get you by 99% of all the dog shows. And again, if you go to the ones that have 50 amp power, you'll need this one for a 30 amp rig. Okay, that's it.